every single aspect of my life was completely changed and deconstructed, and psychologically required just cutting everything loose, everything pretty much that was associated with it, which was pretty much my whole, most of my life, most aspects of my life were associated with bike racing and that scene, and then resulting in that tragedy.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Zone to Speak podcast. I'm your host, Juliana. Hey everyone, at Zone to Speak I know how important it is to stay healthy, strong, and ready for every ride, workout, and adventure. That's why I'm sharing discounts on products I personally use and love, each one designed to support your performance, recovery, and overall well-being. Whether you're a serious athlete or just trying to feel your best. And remember, every time you shop using these codes, you are directly supporting the podcast and helping me bring more great conversations to life. Cyc Plus, their smart pump is a game changer. Light, compact, efficient, and perfect for keeping your tires road and gravel ready. It's also ideal for travel as you can skip the CO2 canisters. You can even change your tire pressure on the go when switching between surfaces. Get 10% off the smart pump and 5% everything else. 15% off down the road cycling gear, beautifully designed and performance-ready apparel. 15% off New Zest, clean, plant-based protein and essential nutrients to fuel your recovery and daily energy. 15% off Oleo's wellness shots, adaptogens, nootropics, and functional nutrients to support performance, focus, and recovery. I take Oleo's daily in the lead up to any of my races, and I have the pre-ride and recovery shots ready for the weekend's big training rides. If you're looking for a clean, effective boost, Oleo's is it. 10% off Cold Age. High-quality supplements, including multivitamins, collagen, creatine, and more. I take their women's fermented multivitamin and creatine daily. 10% off Loop ear plugs, ideal for travel, sleep, sensory recovery, or managing noise at races. 10% off Clearly Not Coffee, a caffeine alternative made with mushrooms, cocoa, maca, and rhodiola. I use it every day for smoother energy, sharper focus, and better hormone balance. 10 pounds off Heal, nutritionally complete, high-protein, plant-based meals for when you are on the go and need something quick, satisfying, and healthy. Also great to take bikepacking. 10 pounds off Shocks headphones, the safest way to listen while you train with open-ear technology that keeps you alert and aware on the road or trail. 35% off Frey Skincare. Skincare made for active people. I have used Frey for 10 years, designed to keep sweaty skin clear, fresh, and glowing. You will find all the partner links, discount codes, and instructions in the episode description. So go check them out and enjoy these perks. Now, let's get into the episode. Welcome back to Zone to Speak. Today, I'm joined by a rider who once redefined what it meant to race gravel. A man known for solo breakaways, unmatched endurance, and a fiercely independent style, Colin Strickland. From his Red Hook crit dominance to his iconic Unbound victory in 2019, Colin helped shape the face of gravel racing. His career has been marked by bold choices, impressive victories, and a genuine love for the bike. For years, he inspired a generation of riders to race on their own terms. But as with many stories worth telling, his path has not been linear. Today, we talk about the rise, the silence that followed, and what it means to start again. This episode is not about headlines. It's about the human behind the handlebars. It's about navigating pressure, grief, and identity. It's about healing, reflection, and whatever comes next. Colin, welcome to Zone to Speak.
Thank you, Juliana.
So good to have you here. So you were winning everything at the fixed gear scene. Who were you before that? And how did you get into cycling? What drew you into it?
Moving into bicycle racing was just a natural shift in my life. As I felt in my early life, in my late teens and early adulthood, I felt I felt like rejecting the car culture that is so dominant in America. That it's just all consuming. It's really there's virtually no effective public transportation in the city of Austin in Texas that I grew up in. So it was really, the car was really presented as the only option. And it was not only, a large financial investment, but it's just, you're compelled to just sit in traffic, and just all these ridiculous compulsive obligations surrounding car culture. So the bicycle was just a means to escape that kind of just that just entrenched sludge waste of life. So when I was at the University of Texas, it just became my natural mode of transport. And obviously it's very affordable to get your foot in the door with the bicycle. And then as we all know, it quickly becomes just this addictive freedom, and it gives back just as much as you give, if not more. So that's how I initially got into cycling, was a way to opt out of the American car culture. In hindsight, that's really what it was, as well as the financial obligations associated with it. And the fitness that, resulted was just kind of a side effect. I was totally unplanned. Racing was never on my radar. So it just was a natural progression by opting out of cars.
Wow. Yeah. I think a lot of us have been there. I went to school in Seattle, so didn't have money for the car. And it was, I think it's a big car culture everywhere in the US. So I really fell in love with a bike more in the US. I mean, as a kid, I always loved the bike, but I was just copying my brothers, following them around the neighborhood. And you really made a name for yourself, dominating the fixed gear crit scene, Red Hook especially, where your style and power stood out. Then you made the jump into gravel, which is such a different beast in terms of terrain, pacing, and even culture. What was that transition like for you, both physically and mentally? Did you feel like a natural evolution, or was it a tough shift?
For me, it felt quite natural. It did feel quite natural. It just felt like a natural, the fixed gear criterium as a outlet, as a professional racing format, was, I could tell, had kind of hit its peak, and the wave was kind of cresting. And yeah, at the same time, gravel racing was, I just enjoyed. Not only is it really charming, at the time in about 2017 when I started participating, the races were really charming because they were so grassroots. They were just it was almost non-bike racers. It was more like what you'd imagine randonneur riders. And yes, it was a race, but it was just really community oriented and community focused. So at the time, I could just tell that's a formula, a participatory formula that was, not only is it really fun and charming, but just as I was trying to make a career out of bike racing. So obviously I enjoyed the long endurance efforts, but it became very clear that this is a format that's going to be very successful because it's just so fun and so, I was going to say it's so pure, but it was at the time. It was just people there who were just trying to have a good experience and not really looking at it as something to dominate or to pull a result out of, or they were all just kind of there for the grind, the collective suffering. Yeah, so that was really charming as an event, and I had a sense that was going to be a format that would probably be successful in the near future.
Well, you're right.
Yeah,
it's a big boom now.
Certainly, and for good reason. It gives people a lot more than a depressing road race with a lot of angst and stress. It offers, it's a better product as a participation offering. So it became clear to me that was going to be a field that would really be growing in the near future. So I wouldn't say I invested in it, but I just started attending more races, and balancing my racing calendar from American crits with balancing between American crits and more American gravel races in 2017. And certainly it was the right decision in terms of positioning for, there aren't many jobs as a professional cyclist in America. There never were. And there's still probably 10 to 20 positions that 10 to 20 athletes that make a decent living as full-time bicycle racers. So it pays to be perceptive and analytical in where you're putting your efforts and what you expect to do to get anybody to care about you riding your bicycle in circles.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah, that seemed like the wise decision.
Yeah, I think it's something that I talked about the podcast in a few episodes. It's great that a lot of racers can own their own career now and have their own exposure and be privateers and have brands support them. But it's also so risky because you don't know if contracts are going to keep going and if you have an injury. But good on you for having that vision and getting into gravel. And then you're talking about 2017, managing both fixed gear criteriums and jumping into gravel. And then in 2019, Unbound, you had the truly legendary win. You took on, this grueling race and you broke away solo with 100 miles to go. Left behind some of the strongest riders in the sport. It was a defining moment, not just for a career, but in gravel racing history. What do you remember most about that day?
Let's see. I remember I didn't get any sleep the night before because I was just very excited, which was torturous at the time. I thought my whole day was honestly fucked from that alone. But let's see. Yeah, it was a beautiful day. I had analyzed the wind, which at the time, I don't think many riders were really studying climactic
now we're studying everything. It's insane, a little too much.
I guess so. I've been pretty tuned out for about 4 years. I don't know where I honestly don't have my finger on the pulse. So I don't know what exactly the strategic trends are, but to me, it was very apparent. I came from a background of environmental consulting. So I studied maps and maps and weather patterns and that stuff. That was a no-brainer. So I had that knowledge going into it that day. So I'm trying to remember what I recall.
Do you remember what was going through your mind during that breakaway?
Sure. Yeah. I knew I had a good day. I was on a good day. I had good legs. By hour 3 or 4, you start to kind of get a good sensation of where you're at that day. Yeah. I initially just started feeling like we were in a group of about 12 of the elite riders going through Little Egypt, which is essentially the hardest defining section. If you're not in the front group at that point, especially back then when there was about 15 to 20 potential winners, not 50 to 100. If you got through Little Egypt, you were in the move. So after that, I started lobbing a couple of attacks, hoping that I could get a rider to come with me. Specifically, an EF rider would have been great because they had 2 of the strongest riders and they had 2 in the move. So I would have liked to get one of them, either Lachlan or Alex House, to come with me. They didn't know who I was, so they were not interested. So they just let me ride away. Well, who knew? They let me ride away. And as soon as I got a gap, I made a big effort to get out of sight because I know how that works. Psychology of chasing a rabbit or just, not seeing the rabbit. It's harder to chase. So yeah, so I had good sensations, and the initial part of the breakaway was the hardest because it was a headwind of about 2.5 hours, 3 hours of strong headwind. But I knew if I got through that, I could have a ripping tailwind for most of the return 70 miles or so. So anyway, as the day progressed, I just didn't really feel the fading that I would have worried about from that long of an effort. And I focus on the minutia. Taking the best line constantly is really a good way to occupy your mind if you're in a position where you could get anxious that you did the wrong things. Yeah, just zeroing in on the minutia of the process and staying efficient, staying aerodynamic, and the time we were allowed to use aero bars, which was a much more relaxed position to be in for that period of time. So yeah, it was a beautiful day on the bike. And honestly, I crossed the line. I didn't feel the same. I had trained for the heat. Obviously Texas it was especially hot year. So I had done many days in extreme heat. And I don't think any of the other top 5 had done time
A
in that
lot
kind
of people
heat.
struggle with the heat there. Yeah.
It's a beast. And if you don't acclimate to that specifically, there's no substitute in my opinion. And it will crack you to some extent. But anyway, that day I was prepared for that. So yeah, I was able to just keep pushing on the pedals.
What a great day. And I don't know if it was on that race or when it was that you built your own frame bag and you had that bladder inside for your hydration. And I know this is something that a lot of brands still don't do. A lot of brands are still testing. Still a lot of people carrying the hydration pack on your back. I mean, that's so visionary of you. Like, how did you do that? How did you have the idea? How did you create your own frame bag?
It's, to me, that was actually, I crafted that device for the next race, which was actually 2021, because 2020 was canceled for the COVID-19.
Yeah.
And at that point, honestly, I had kind of lost my fire. I had slacked on training. 2020 for me had kind of extinguished my flame for the hunger and just like, you know, the tenacity you need to be at that level. So I knew I was coming into the race. I'd averaged, I think, 10 hours a week of training that for the last 6 months. So I was not prepared. So I was looking for all the advantages, and it seemed like a no-brainer to move. So 2 liters of water is approximately 5 pounds of weight. And if you consider carrying that on your back in an aero position over 10 hours, well, now 8.5 hours, that's a serious fatigue point. So it seemed like a no question, if you could integrate that into your chassis where you don't carry the weight physically, your rolling chassis is carrying the weight, minus, and you subtract that fatigue from your core muscles, from your back, from your arms, seems like absolute unquestionable advantage in the fatigue department, which Unbound is as much about just general physical fatigue as it is about leg fatigue. So I started thinking about different designs, and I decided on using a polypropylene, kind of a cutting mat material that's really tough, that's designed to be scored by cutting blades, and specifically designed it for my frame because to save weight and material. I had, obviously there's touring frame bags, but they're just relatively heavy, they're clunky, they bulge, they're not very aerodynamic. They're just not highly specialized. They're not designed for a single frame, as far as I know. There's probably a few, but so I designed more of kind of imagine like a taco shell that tucks up into the upper part. I ride a size 58, so I have plenty of room, which is anyone could do it, but you'd have to adjust your bottle size and cage location. So yeah, it was really just a kind of a cupped shell that fit up into your triangle and was zip tied into place and was nice and rigid. So even with 2 liters of water, it stayed didn't bulge and rub your knees. Anyhow, so yeah, that 5 pounds of water was transferred to the chassis of my bike. I had a snafu, which NV wheels would be delivered, so they didn't get there till the night before. So I ended up staying up till about 10 p.m. the day before the race because I decided which bike to ride based on conditions and getting the right wheels. So it was kind of a ridiculous shit show, but very on brand, and stayed up too late. Made this amazing thing that I would attribute the only way that I would have gotten top 5 in that with that poor preparation was with some kind of an advantage, which I think was that hydration pack. So yeah, I proposed it to many brands, including Ass Savers and pretty much all of my sponsors. I was just telling them, look, this is could be a massive, it's cheap to make. You just have to, the way I envisioned it would be get a CAD design of all the frames you want to target in the different sizes, and you just make a CAD drawing, cut the thing out of flat stock, ship it with zip ties and sew a big long zipper into it to access. Yeah, I didn't find any takers. I still don't understand why, because it's so cheap to make and so effective. But
yeah, that's shocking,
I know
because there is a huge need for it.
I don't love that it would be. It's not disposable. It would probably last, 3 or 4 months. But it's really a race oriented device. I guess not, because that cutting mat can be very durable. But yeah, I saw it as an obvious innovation, but I know a couple of riders have kind of mimicked it and made their own version, which is cool. Yeah, that was the story of that little contraption. It worked incredibly well for me for one race.
Yeah, I was impressed. Still impressed with this date, and I again can't believe no brand took you on that, because I think it would be a successful product. I come from triathlon, and in triathlon there is a lot of gadgets for that, for you to carry your water. Of course, this is probably less water because distance a little bit shorter, especially like on long distance gravel or ultra distance, you need maybe more. But
it was very quick to change because I made a really long zipper, so you could just pull the entire bladder out, pop a new one in, and yeah, see, it worked extremely well, even without testing in the pit stop until day of the race. The first test in the morning, but it went really well, and you can freeze the thing, so it goes in cold and then melts. But
that's anyway. Really good. Well, maybe someday.
I never patented it, so anyone can have it at this point.
You talked about your training, and for what I noticed, don't know if it's accurate, it seems like you trained solo and stayed independent. What did that autonomy give you as an athlete? What was that purposeful?
Well, it allowed me to, for better or worse, allocate a lot of time to other pursuits, such as, house renovation and different car projects. And let's see. So that autonomy allowed me to, ride on the schedule. I ended up riding in the heat of the day a lot, which a lot of other riders wanted to dodge the heat of the day. But to me, I saw it as an advantage and just kind of a natural arc. I enjoyed, especially for long endurance rides, I kind of liked ending my rides later in the evening, so that it would be just a natural end of the day, eat, go to sleep, versus riding in the morning and then you finish your ride around in the early afternoon and you'd just be fatigued and exhausted and relatively useless for the rest of the day, and you'd have to kind of nap or sleep anyway, and that would be your day. Whereas otherwise, if you rode later in the day, I could get some things done in the morning and then spend most of the day out on the bike, and then it would be this natural winding down with eating and going to sleep.
Yeah, it makes sense. I ride out alone a lot as well, just because my days are usually hectic and I don't want to make plans and then flake on someone, because I will. Mm-hmm. But I always have a hard time training later in the day with my nutrition. I feel like, now I have lunch and I still full or something. So for me, the mornings, I like it more because of the nutrition. Yeah, that's the only thing. Anyways, at one point you were the face of gravel. How did you handle this visibility?
I don't think I felt too affected by it. I didn't live in a real, the community in Austin. I'd been racing bikes there for 10 years at that point, so I was already well entrenched. Everybody knew me. There was no real fanfare there. I would still do the weekly crit race pretty much every week, the driveway series. I didn't live in a town like Boulder or a place that was real, sceney, I guess. I didn't feel it I did not feel it day to day. And also it's you, so you can pedal a bike longer than anybody else. It doesn't, or not anybody, but like anybody who's at a particular event. It's just, I don't know. It doesn't seem so, it's like you're not that special. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, it's nice that your environment kept you grounded. You were not impacted by that.
Well, there's infinite faster people who could do what you do so much better. They just never discovered the bicycle, You were just fortunate enough that you found a bike and you started riding it a lot, but you're not. Yeah, I don't know. There's always faster humans or stronger humans. So to let it go to your head that you were fortunate enough, I don't know. It just never seemed like I don't know.
You seem
Not
very
a true
grounded.
defining superlative. It's cool, and I appreciated it all, but it didn't. I don't know. It's always seemed like it not that relevant.
I get it. You're doing for fun and kind of your job as well, since you're monetizing it to live your life, but
Yeah,
it's your lifestyle. It's not something that you took for.
I certainly tried not to. I mean, it just didn't seem. I don't know. If you're a natural, then you're a natural, and you don't have. It's not. I don't know. Everybody else at the race is doing just as, or if not harder, of an effort than you, because they have another job and they didn't.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
I guess that's how I dealt with it. I just rationalized it as, yeah, I was just trying to serve as an inspiration to get other people out to ride their bicycle more, which really was, I weighed it often against, my previous career in environmental consulting, where I worked on highway projects and things that I just don't believe in as the future of humanity. I mean, I know they're a utility that we all use, but it just didn't seem like a legacy I would have been proud of. So when I had the opportunity to just ride a bicycle and race, I saw my job was then to inspire other people to get out and ride their bicycle, which I saw as a positive for humanity as a whole, which is challenging to find a way to make money and still have something you believe in.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
But I think you
that's what I
accomplished
saw.
that.
I hope so.
At least, in my end, I told you before, my husband used to race crits as well. And so he knew who you were. And then he went into gravel. He went into gravel. And that's how I also started graveling. So here we are today.
Well, here we are.
So we talked a little bit about Unbound, how roots it was. I don't know if you still follow any of the gravel races these days. Just curious to see if you are following, and what do you think gravel racing has changed as it's become more mainstream?
Honestly, I don't really follow. I watched a little bit of Unbound this last week, actually. I have a good friend. I was really unplugged from the sport completely for about 3 years. I live in a little small town of about 12,000 humans, just about 20 miles south of Austin now. So I've kind of moved on to other things. But I have a good friend here who's named Miha Barat, who is from Slovenia, and he is cycling obsessed. He did Unbound last year, so he's kind of inspired me to start following, not or just watching the sport from time to time again. It's using, feeding off of his enthusiasm is fun. So yeah, so I've just barely been touching in. So honestly, I don't have much perspective currently on what the scene is. I know it's gotten hyper competitive as people smell the success and they smell an opportunity. So therefore, stronger riders come. Obviously, becomes more competitive with that as people see the ability to do what we did, but it's far more challenging to do that now. Timing is really important in most things, especially in
Yeah.
cycling. But yeah, so I couldn't speak to exactly the changes. I mean, besides the horsepower is just incredible. Cycling is a very aggregate sport, so I'm curious how the same riders would do in a group of 15 competitive versus 100 competitive. It's interesting if the times would still be crazy fast or if they would be less fast. But the horsepower of the group is now, it's more like a proper professional peloton. So they're moving with a lot of power and watts and it's a much deeper field. So people are attacking earlier to essentially to separate yourself and to even have an impact in the race. So many riders now, you don't even hear of any impact just because they just weren't in the position. Much like, World Tour, where it's hard to make any impact in the race when it's that deep of a field. So that's the main change that I see is like riders that I know are pushing 300 watts for 10 hours. You never 9 hours, you never even see their name in the top 10.
Yeah, the feud is crazy. I was talking to another girl that she did like Traka a few years ago and was on the top 5, I think. And then she was commenting like nowadays she would not even make top 50. It's incredible how fast the field is. It's really crazy. So for me, I'm just looking now at the roots, more small town races, because I can't do these races anymore.
Well, yeah, there's always the next generation who's hungry. The hunger is so important in cycling. You just have
Yeah,
to be hungry
you
and
have to
motivated,
have that mindset.
you have to be focused.
Yeah,
You could get away with a little lack of focus when I was doing it, just because of the field wasn't as dense and there wasn't as much focused individuals. So you could have a few other pursuits in life and not just live like a monk.
yeah,
But
yeah. You
yeah,
could still
it's
pull it off
required
if you
now
had
because,
the talent.
well, yeah. So I can't speak exactly to what's changed, but maybe I'll start following again. We'll see.
Yeah, I'll talk about that a little bit later. So we all know that in 2022, your life changed dramatically when you were thrust into the spotlight, not for athletic achievements, unfortunately, but because of the tragic and widely publicized murder case involving someone you weren't connected to. And I want to acknowledge the weight of that moment in your life and the immense scrutiny you faced, and want to know like what was like to experience the level of public attention and scrutiny almost overnight.
It was a very surreal experience, obviously, and yeah, just I mean, it was one of the most horrific passages to go through I could have ever imagined, psychologically and emotionally and in every way. I mean, I cannot imagine a more horrific thing to be connected to and to be paired with and to be a part of. It's just, yeah, words still escape me on just how, just I mean, on every level, it was just crushing, soul crushing, and
Yeah,
yeah,
because you also it
you're
was a loss for you as well.
yeah, it's just it was just the most compounded um, explosion imaginable. Just everything in your life just burns, and everything you kind of held as kind of defining for yourself and for the world and for people around you, it all just burned in one overnight, effectively. Everything, and you just left with, I don't know, just shell shocked and without any idea what's going on and what means anything. And then the aftermath uh, was just another. Yeah, it was all just, I cannot describe how horrific and bizarre. Um, yeah, so
Can
it
you
just changed. I mean, every single aspect of my life was completely changed and deconstructed, and yeah, required a complete just to survive, psychologically required just cutting everything loose, everything pretty much that was associated with it, which was pretty much my whole, most of my life, most aspects of my life were associated with bike racing and that scene, and then resulting in that tragedy. So yeah, just survival required distancing myself from everything.
can you try to put into words how did that time affect your mental and emotional well-being?
Sure. Again, it was just the most soul crushing torture I could imagine. You have no escape. You live in your own head, and while sure it's this tragedy that people read about, when it's your own life and you are a part of something so heartbreaking and senseless and meaningless, destruction, it's impossible to escape it. So you are living in this horror story 24/7. So yeah, it just crushes your spirit, or it did mine. I mean, yeah, there were no for a year, for probably over 2 years, until well after the trial, there was virtually very few moments of the day that my head wasn't just consumed by just these cyclical reels of just unanswered questions and just pain and um, just wondering why did this, how and why did, did this happen? Where it's something so meaningless and there's no answers to these questions, really. They're just, I guess, a psychotic lapse could be the only thing I have concluded could be attributed to, but there's just no answer. So yeah, my mind is kind of overactive in general. So it was just a special kind of, for me personally, it was just constant torture, searching for some kind of a answer, but there just is no answer to
Yeah.
how or why. So yeah, it was just, yeah, I don't know if I could have designed a more perfect torture. And I don't want to, obviously there's so many people who suffered and so much more than I did. I was just collateral, but that was just my personal experience. It was just absolute uncomprehensible pain and torture of how and why something so senseless occurred in my
Yeah,
world.
it's beyond comprehension, really. And I can't even start to imagine what you went through and the others impacted. What do you think helped you through those moments, through those years? What grounded you, kept you?
This helped a lot.
Oh,
This is Gigi.
yes.
She honestly
Gigi.
kind of kept me alive at times.
Animal therapy is truly healing.
Yeah, that's part of it. Focusing, fortunately, I had acquired an automotive shop, so just focusing on using my hands and just affecting some change on something I could work on, versus my life I could not work on. It was beyond my control at that point. So I stopped riding, exercising completely, which caused other kind of bizarre health issues that I could not have comprehended. But yeah, so what just distancing myself completely from my previous life, which was my entire life. I moved out to my shop and just, yeah, kind of lived like a bizarre golem hermit for a few years till I could just have some sense of, I don't know, there was no peace, honestly, until there were semblances of peace after the trial, which was a whole nother traumatic experience. But obviously I don't want to cast myself as a victim here, because I'm just collateral. But yeah, my experience was horrific. I can't really describe it. But I know everyone's in far worse, for the victim's family. And yeah, I can't even really speak to it. It's just still so bizarre and incomprehensible.
It is incomprehensible. And I mean, some people would disagree with me, but I do think you are also a victim. I mean, you were not part of that directly. And I'm sure, I mean, you're a good person. It's not something that you would ever imagine you would happen. Nobody does, no, nobody would think that would happen.
It's bizarre to be a catalyst in something so foul.
Yeah.
Which is the real torture, is like, whether it was senseless or not, but I was still this bizarre little connecting catalyst, which does not feel good to be. But yeah, I dove into, tried to start building a new life, really, because that was the only option. The idea of going back into bike racing, and still is the most, I will never, I cannot imagine having the fire and the, you need that fire and you need that desire, and I am so far from being able to can imagine myself in that space again. It's just not
yeah, I can't. Yeah, it's probably a trigger for some of the memories. I mean, there were so many good and beautiful memories, I'm sure you have, but just that one.
I've honestly, they've all been kind of distant. I can't even, I've had to just erase. I've almost like erased. I haven't, but that's kind of the sensation. It all just had to go, had to be burned. So just to survive, just to be at peace.
Survival, yeah. There was survival mechanism.
There's no peace when you're in something so off.
What would you want people to understand about who you were during that time and who you are now?
During what time?
The time that everything happened in 2022.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there's anything I would like people to know. It comes down to, there's so many. I mean, there was an entire if anybody's interested in this story, there was an entire trial where there was all of the information, every single communication, every single factoid was uncovered. And if anyone's interested in exploring it, this horrific story, all the information's out there. I don't know why you'd want to besides entertainment, but
Yeah.
it's all out there. So I've never had an urge to like, there is also a lot of just a bizarre, conclusive, people were just jumping to bizarre conclusions, which is human nature. So I don't really see an urge to like, you can't fight irrational, fabrication. So there's no, and it's infinite. So I don't know if there's anything. So I just kind of have this attitude of, I don't really have anything I don't have any energy to share.
I think that's good.
You're
in peace with, you know who you are, and you don't have to be trying to understand all these fabrications and say something about it.
Yeah. Fortunately, I had a very nurturing and childhood and wonderful young adulthood and a lot of success and things so I had a pretty well formed sense of self, because I can't imagine going into something like this without a strong knowledge of who you are and what you stand for, because it was just the most destabilizing experience. Obviously the human history has tragedy, is full of horrific tragedies, but most people don't experience them. So I'm not going to categorize this as a profound human tragedy. Well, but for me, it was very intense, and I cannot imagine going through it without having such honestly a blessed background, young, past life to get through it.
Yeah, it could crumble. Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know I don't really have anything to say to anybody, just from a place of, I don't know. It's the kind of experience that makes you question every single thing and every piece of, if you build up your self-worth around certain things, it makes you question everything. So at the end of the day, you conclude, I don't really know anything. That was the conclusion. So I don't know anything I thought I knew, any impact I thought I was having on the world. I just don't, I don't know anymore. So yeah, just trying to live day by day and try to rediscover, allow yourself to find happiness again. Whereas for, a good 3 years or so, you can't even let yourself be happy. It just doesn't feel right to just have any kind of enjoyment. It's just wrong. You're just in mourning for indefinitely So that much is all I can share. That would be interesting tidbit of experience like this. Just it does not allow yourself to feel any happiness for a period.
Well, I hope that the saying time heals. I hope you are able to allow yourself to feel happiness and joy. And how about your relationship with the bike? I know you said you can't imagine yourself to go back to the racing scene, but have you healed your relationship with the bike? Are you getting on your bike? Has this improved?
I think I did one training ride in the last 6 months. So I ride a townie bike around to get around, but no, I do not train. I've been doing one ride out to West Texas a year in November for the last 2 years, which has been very beautiful. So pretty much almost 500 miles in 4 days. I've just jumped on the bike and done it. So I can still pedal a bike, but I'm not training per se. I have nothing to train for. I will not be racing a bike anymore. So the relationship with the bike is an interesting one. For me, it's I can't really say. I had a lot of I feel like I had a lot of valuable racing knowledge I could share with people, but I thought of having a podcast around just racing mindset. But yeah, for me personally, I don't know. Maybe I need to rediscover the balance and I've had a few enjoyable group rides, but recently I've been running a bit, which is a nice. It's not nice, but it's something. Apparently,
it's good to get the body moving.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, it's essential for me, especially going from where your body is just used to that much output for 10 or 15 years to go cold stop has all kinds of psychological and physiologic side effects that people can, hopefully no one gets to discover.
Well, maybe one day, if you want, you can come back. If you don't have your own Racing Mindset podcast, we can have an episode on that.
Sure. That stuff's fun. All the stuff beyond it's really just harnessing this matrix of little small variables and trying to fashion them in your favor versus it's just a hyper awareness of everything going on and holding that mindset, not just spacing out and going with the flow. It's really a constant analytics.
The strategy.
It's a constant checklist you're running through. Where am I? What are these variables? What's about to happen? And it's harnessing every possible minutia and turning all of these little vectors in your favor versus ignoring them can have a over time large cumulative effect on.
So interesting.
Anyway, for another episode.
Yeah, that would be fun. And outside of racing, I noticed from your social media that you seem to have a passion for working with your hands. You work at fixing up cars, and also I think you play the guitar. Can you tell me more about those interests, how they became part of your life?
Certainly. Guitar has been a kind of part of my life for about 20 years now, 15 or 20 years. It's kind of that's my recovery activity. I don't really watch television or play video games, but there's no better at recovery activity than sitting on a couch and playing guitar. It's a nice passive, relaxing, therapeutic activity for me, and it's become more. I've had more time to put into it, which is great. To watch that side hobby, kind of become more fully formed. Additionally, I've opened an automotive restoration shop. During 2020, there was no racing, so I dove into educating myself and initially beginning the studying of, ironically, cars and turbo diesel trucks specifically, which came from initially from a passion for building a Spartan trailer, which is similar to an Airstream. I built my first unit. I actually took it to Unbound 2021 and used it as my kind of racing headquarters, which was great. This big aluminum travel trailer. So that got me into towing trucks, turbo diesel trucks, big powerful trucks that do work trucks really. And that got me. Now I focus on importing Mercedes G-Wagons, old Geländewagens,
nice.
G-Series, and doing engine swaps and transmission swaps and restoring these cars and bringing them to market in the US. So that's keeping me very busy, as well as renovating an old house. But I have an auto shop. I have an Instagram for that called Willow Works Lockhart. If you're interested in automotive, European, SUVs and turbo diesel, manual transmission, analog engines and such, give that a look. So that's how I'm spending my time now, and I enjoy getting dirty. I'm filthy every day. I'm filthy at the end of the day, covered in.
You're smiling, so I think that makes you happy.
Yeah, it certainly does. I like working with my hands. I cannot imagine working on a computer. It's just not for me. I like the puzzles and the crafting of variety of things. I do a lot of fabrication and welding and engine building and a lot of cleaning and restoring. Pretty much I clean up old useful things, old useful cars that were made to be restored, whereas now plastics and such cars are just not built to be restored. They're just built to be used and disposed of, deconstructed. So that's been a passion of mine, and I'm turning that into my next career phase. So I own my own shop, run my own shop, and that's my new life.
Wonderful. So in this new chapter of life, your focus is on your shop.
Certainly. Yeah. And it's ironic because that was initially what I didn't really develop any desire to even own a car until my early 20s. And now it's kind of what I still hate American car culture, but cars are just a fascinating.
Well, but
useful.
It's sustainable what you're doing. You're restoring old things. So it's not like the industry is now of everything is replaceable, should be replaced and disposable.
It's a really complex argument to make, but I would argue the most sustainable car is one that's already built, that you don't drive much and you ride your bicycle, but you have a effective work vehicle that has been around for 40 years and will be around another 40 years, not a Prius plastic thing that you charge off. In the US, in Texas, you charge it off of electricity coming from a coal-fired power plant or natural gas power plant. And what's the point of driving this plastic car?
Exactly. That's what I talk about.
So while it's apparently the environmentally friendly choice, it's highly debatable what the most sustainable type of vehicle is. Well, it's not actually. It is a bicycle. That's what, to ride your bicycle.
Yeah, I'm so happy I moved a year and a half ago. I moved to a smaller town and I don't have a car. I just ride my bike or walk everywhere and it feels so good. I really love it. Well, Colin, thank you so much for being here, for your vulnerability and sharing your story with such honesty and grace. It takes a lot of courage to show up and speak up openly. Your willingness to reflect, to be human, and to keep moving is very powerful. And I thank you for sharing here in the podcast.
Certainly. Thanks for listening.
Sure. And that's all for today's episode. I want to thank the listeners for tuning in. Your support means everything. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider following, leaving a review, and sharing it with your friends.